Welcome to this video about Tableau's order of operations. After watching this video, you should be able to describe what the order of operations does, what it impacts, as well as be able to add a filter to context. What I want to do to highlight our order of operations is let's go and duplicate our fixed sheet. So I'm going to right click on Fixed LOD and let's duplicate this. And then I'm going to name this one Order of Operations. Okay, so notice we do have that 843,000 is our total borough number. Remember that comes from this total borough total death. So I'm going to right click, edit. Remember this one is fixed at the ETL load date and the borough date. So what I'm going to do is let's create this borough total deaths. I'm going to duplicate that calculation, right click, edit the copied version. We're going to call this borough total deaths order of operations. And for this one, what we're going to do to make it a little bit different is I'm not going to fix it at my ETL load date. So we're just going to fix this at the borough. Now, before you close this, I want you to think about what that might mean for our visualization. So what that is telling Tableau to do is it's saying only think about the borough and then calculate the sum of our COVID death count. So what this is really going to do is this is going to calculate all time our borough death count. So this is not going to respect that our month, day, year filter up here is set to February 15th. This calculation is going to ignore that because it's just fixed at the borough level, not at the borough and date level. So I'm going to go and click OK here. And so now what I want is let's grab our borough total deaths order of operations. I'm going to drop that on tooltip. Remember, because we formatted our tooltip, it's actually not going to show up in here. So I'm going to click on tooltip. And right here where it says sum borough total deaths, let's go ahead and insert our sum borough total deaths order of operations, just so that those two numbers are going to be right next to each other. Perfect. All right, now when I do it, I see that it's 2.5%. Here's my 843,000, and then next to it, I have 13,060,776. So what that's telling me is that Manhattan, for the entire length of our data set, has had over 13 million COVID deaths. And so that means that this 843,000 is the number of deaths that I think is the cumulative, I think I should talk about it that way, is the cumulative number of deaths up to February 15th. So if I add up all the cumulative numbers, that's where I'm getting that 13 million. Now, that probably doesn't mean a whole lot to us because if the 843,000 is our cumulative total, I don't want to add up my cumulative totals because that's going to be, that number just doesn't make much sense to us. So what we are left with is I can either fix my calculation so that my fixed calculation, like we saw here at the borough total deaths, I can either incorporate my ETL load date into the fixed level of detail calculation, or if I don't want to fix it there, and I just want to fix it at the borough level, I need to somehow tell Tableau that I need it to do this filtering first, and then I want it to do our new order of operations calculation. Because right now Tableau is doing this order of operations calculation first, and then it's filtering for February 15th. So if I want to change the order in which things are being filtered, I need to look at our order of operations. So here we see, this is the order of operations that we talked about earlier in the introduction to this module. So you'll notice my dimension filter, that's here. So I'm going to draw a little box around that. So that's our date. So when I filter to February 15th of 2022, that's a dimension filter. Now you'll notice that my fixed level of detail calculation is happening right here, right before I filter by my date. So Tableau is calculating the total number of deaths at the borough level, then it's filtering by the date. I want it to filter by the date first and then do a level of detail calculation. That's why if you remember, when we do an exclude level of detail calculation, the exclude level of detail calculation happens after the date. So Tableau first filters to February 15th and then does the exclude, and that's why our exclude number was working. But now my fixed level of detail is not working because it's happening before. So if I want to update this, remember our options are I can either, within my fixed level of detail calculation, I can fix it at the borough and the date, like we originally did. Or I can change where my date filter happens. So what I would really need to do is I need to change my date filter to happen so that it's happening at this level, which is called a context filter. So back here on Tableau, up here in my filters, here's my date. Notice it's blue, so that means it's a dimension or it's a discrete variable. So it's happening after that 13 million. So what I'm going to do now is let's right click on my month, day, year, ETL load date, and then you'll notice there's an option up here called add to context. What that's going to do is that's going to move this filter up in Tableau's order of operations. So when I click add to context, Tableau is going to make it gray. So that's a visual indicator that Tableau has made that to context. And now if I hover over my bubbles, you'll notice that I now have two numbers that match each other, because now what Tableau is doing is it's filtering to our date, in this case, February 15th. Then it's calculating that fixed level of detail calculation for my boroughs, and that's why I'm getting the same dates. So what that means is that if I want to do a fixed level of detail calculation and I want to apply filters, I need to take into account where those filters are happening. And there might be a situation like this one where I need to add it to that context. Or, like we originally did here with our borough total deaths, I can add the date. I can add the date to my fixed level of detail calculation. With fixed exclude or include level of detail calculations, you can add as many levels as you want, just with more additional commas. So each additional comma, you would fix it at a different level. That's also why my includes and excludes, we're respecting this filter. So if we hover over one of our bullet points here, if I change my date, those bubbles in that borough total death with the exclude, it's respecting the date filter, because if we open up our level of detail, or if we open up our order of operations, notice my exclude and include level of detail calculations happen after dimension filters. So earlier we had talked about, well, when do I know when to use which one? And it kind of depends, depending on what you're looking for, depending on what filters you're using. That's going to depend whether or not you use an include or exclude or a fixed level of detail calculation. If I were you, we don't necessarily need to memorize this, but there are situations where having this level of, there are situations where it can be helpful knowing the Tableau order of operations. I've had to Google this many times. And so I would just kind of keep this in the back of your mind when you are calculating things using sets, fixed level of detail calculations, includes, excludes, etc. It can be important just to kind of have this in the back of your mind, because if I'm creating calculations and I'm not getting the result I was expecting, there's a really good chance that there might be something happening with my order of operations. We hope you've enjoyed this video, that you have learned what the order of operations is, what it impacts, and how to add filters to context, and in doing so, kind of rearranging the order in which it happens. But we hope you have enjoyed this video and that you feel more comfortable using Tableau's order of operations for your own data visualization purposes.